Beautiful.
Yeah. So,
So, yeah, no, I think the last time we were starting this, or the last time we did this, we were talking about stealth, and this time I kind of want to go into, I guess, RPGs, because I find at one point or another they've definitely switched style and have they left the whole realm of like turn-based kind of RPGs and just went more into like first-person shooters or just a completely different realm of RPG now, and like the old school Japanese RPG or just RPGs in general have kind of I don't know they've divulged from what they were from like I said turn-based games, and they just feel different now.
what do
But
you
there's still surprisingly a lot of them out there. They're just not as put
uh,
up to the front.
when you say turn-based games, you mean like you would take action, and then the enemy would take action, and then you would take action, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah,
I'm not familiar too well with RPGs, so
well, I mean, like, it was more like the Final Fantasies at the time, the Chrono Triggers,
okay, yeah.
even stuff. What was it?
Even Pokemon to an
Heroes and
extent.
yeah, Pokemon. I mean, I think Pokemon is literally the only thing that has survived that long in a turn-based kind of manner that has really stayed out there. But a lot of the old, like a lot of the other ones, like let's say the Final Fantasy series, has definitely gone through some trying times ever since after 10. It's just been weird, and I find that style of RPG has been slowly being phased out.
Well, I know that the remake, the Final Fantasy VII remake, is it's a hack and slash almost,
Yeah,
from what it seems. So yeah, it's definitely. I think it steered away from, select this ability, combine it with this, you know, tool or gadget or whatever, and perform the attack. Right? It's no longer
mm,
that. Now it's press this to attack. Like this is a heavy swing. This is a light swing. This is your mana attack. There's less menus involved. It seemed from what as far as I can tell for somebody who doesn't dabble too much in RPGs.
I find that there's it's definitely straight away for the more strategic style to a more action oriented style, like just to keep people more engaged, more involved. Uh, it was definitely around like the PS2 era that I had noticed that like with games like Kingdom Hearts at the time, that was like their first kind of not first delve into action RPGs because those have been around for a little bit, but they weren't nearly as popular back then as they are now. They weren't as better developed. Um, but yeah, after Kingdom Hearts 2, they slowly started to get into the action RPG, like even like stuff like Mass Effect. The later Final Fantasies, like Final Fantasy 13, when that finally came out, was a lot more action oriented. And just everything, even 12, the same thing. Most of it was more action oriented or like MMO RPG oriented, and it was less turn based, less like even though they were pretty, how do I put it? They took like you had to kind of take your time. The active ATB also kind of helped you keep that whole vibe of actually trying to make quick decisions. It was like speed chess. That's how I
Okay.
would kind of it was a little bit more like speed chess. Like where you want to try and do your moves kind of quick, but you also want to do them very strategically. Whereas now I find I don't know, they've focused way more onto the action side of things.
Well,
Like
it sounds to me like it went the same route as stealth games, where RPGs is a specific niche.
yeah,
It's a much more popular niche. Like a lot of people like RPGs. However, it sounds like developers, as time went on, tried to accommodate for everybody. The casuals, the non RPGers. You know,
yeah,
like I think anybody can pick up our Final Fantasy VII remake and play it now. You know,
pretty much.
whereas I don't think that logic applies to the original one unless you have a like for that style of gameplay.
Yeah,
And it just sounds like it's the industry heading towards, here's a little bit for everybody, and not I have mastered this craft.
yeah.
Here's my product. It's here's my, I don't know, my my one pot game for you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely get what you mean. There was I found even when we were talking about the whole stealth series before, and I felt the same way about RPGs as well. Like they either took a lot of elements, brought it over to a lot of other games. Like look at God of War.
Hmm.
Like they brought in a lot of RPG elements, like you had said. I mean, Fallout was already kind of its own RPG, but then they turned that into a first person shooter, and it blew up. It became super popular. Mass Effect was another action oriented RPG because it was all running. It wasn't really run and gun, but it was definitely like you're going around gunning down things while having those RPG elements and the whole like character dialogue.
Hmm.
Uh, I found that that game kind of did it pretty well as far as keeping the dialogue like intense, or keeping not intense, but keeping the dialogue fun and interactive for anyone involved. But I think that the people miss what's it? There was an element that kind of changed when it went from written script out into voice like voice script basically. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I understand that. To you, what would be in your mind? What was the last good RPG that you played? I'm not talking like what was the last game you played that was an RPG. I'm talking like in
Mm.
terms of in order of release date. What was the last good RPG that like when you think of playing an RPG that in your mind was
Okay.
reminds you of the golden age? What was the last game that came out that gave you that feeling?
Honestly, probably what was it? The Final Fantasy VII remake.
Okay, despite that it didn't have turn-based gameplay.
No, but they did kind of incorporate. They did kind of incorporate some of it.
Okay.
But it was just it's you still felt it was very much more an action RPG than more of a turn-based one. But they did a pretty good job at trying to keep it as turn-based as they could without taking out um what's it the action part of it that was already there. Like it was they seem to have wanted it to be like something new, but at the same time please the fans by including the turn-based system,
Yeah.
or at least somewhat of a turn-based ish system.
Have you ever played games like XCOM and that kind of stuff? Would that fall in that category or no?
I mean, I would put that more in like an RTS.
Oh,
It's
okay.
weird because like I find like RTSs are in some sense like those turn-based RPGs where you have to strategize how you move your guys around.
How you use your resources and what abilities you use and when.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Um.
just last night I was playing Command and Conquer Generals,
Oh yeah.
an old school one,
Yes.
you know, and I have a blast with it, you know. Um, it's just
But
it's so much fun to see, uh, because like you said, it you have to strategize, right? You need to
yeah.
know what you can do, when you can do it, and then you have to combine that with picking the right moment of using the abilities with like
Yeah.
a dash of luck sometimes.
Yeah. That's it. But I find that there are some out there. Like I still have yet to try it out, but I heard that the Octopath Traveler was apparently really really good. If you like those old school turn-based like pixel art kind of games,
Hmm.
um, and even when you were mentioning XCOM, I completely forgot. But Final Fantasy Tactics was another game very much in that whole regard, where you have troops that you have a whole battlefield, you have guys you have to move around, and they'll do specific like you can either have like a mage, an archer, like different classes of characters, and they'll do certain things or interact in certain ways where you have to fight them at different levels or whatnot.
Okay. I remember I did buy a an RPG for back in my PS3 days.
Hmm.
But I think it's a franchise that's still going. Like there's a good following on it. I think it's called Valkyria Chronicles. I'm not sure.
Yes, yeah, I know that that one's been around for a good while.
It's like an anime World War II RPG. It's just it's so bizarre, but it just looks good. And I remember playing it and enjoying it. Like I played well.
Yeah,
And it was one of those turn-based games where it was probably like Final Fantasy Tactics in the sense that how like you know like you can only move a certain amount of spaces You know, you can only it's not run around as free as you want and engage. I think if I remember it correctly,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
like you have a certain meter of how many spaces you can move. So if you're going to move, make sure you can move to cover, or make sure you can move in a position that gives you an opportunistic firing position or whatnot. So so what I would like to see for me personally to get me interested in, because I'm a person that when I play video games, I don't like to go too far into the surreal. You'll notice,
Yeah.
like I don't go into fantasy or magic and spells and all those things. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I tend to keep my games grounded in, I guess you could say, reality. And it could be historic also. Like I'll play, like, Age of Empires or Assassin's Creed. It doesn't have to be. Oh, sorry. It doesn't have to be something of today. Like I can play a
Mm.
game that's based in the 20s. I can play 1920s. I can play a game that's based, in whatever time period. I think there was one called what's that famous Kingdom Deliverance Kingdom or something like that?
Difference Kingdom.
Yeah, it's like a first person medieval game, and it's heavy on RPG in the sense like how you build up all your stats, and it's a lot of select your speech to progress and that kind of stuff. Oh my god, why can't I remember the name of this game?
I don't know. For some reason, it just reminded me of like the oh my god, the guys who made Elden Ring and Dark Souls and all that.
hmm
It for some reason it just you reminded me of that a little bit.
Okay, well, but anyways, it's another game that's grounded in reality, and it's hyper realistic. It's
Well,
it's but it is. I was told that it was considered one of the most realistic medieval games out there in terms of the combat and the way you operate your character, and you have to make sure he doesn't starve or go thirsty and things like that. Also, um,
was that sort of like For Honor?
no, 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 it's first person.
Okay, okay,
It's
right. Yeah,
first
you
person.
said first person. I don't know
Hang
why
on,
I thought For Honor.
let me pull up the. Let me see if I could just find the name of the game. But the point I was trying to make is that because my games are grounded in reality. Oh, it's called Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Okay.
Yeah, if you get a chance to
Shoot.
check that out, dude, it's really good.
Oops.
Once you see the box art, you'll recognize it right away. You'll be like, oh yeah, I know that.
Oh yeah, I think yeah, you're right. I think I've seen it somewhere.
Yeah,
Never really paid attention to it that much.
but uh, but yeah, because a lot of my experience with RPGs are grounded in reality. That's why I
Mm.
think I never really dabbled in it too much. Because when you think RPG and you think like based in my timeline and well, my timeline and the timelines that I like to play in, or the world
Yeah.
that I like to play in, it just doesn't apply for some reason. Like there's not that many games out there like that. Or and if I'm wrong, like tell me. I'll gladly jump into one.
No, no, I for the most part agree. That's I think that's more or less what I'm talking about. I found that like the Western side of things has taken its own way of doing and playing out RPGs, and it's more popular out here, except for like those niche crowd that like really liked a little bit of the older style. That's why I was saying like Octopath Traveler because that was one of the recent more recent games that kind of followed a little bit more of the old school Japanese RPG formula, which was just like you'd run around, get into a random battle encounter, and then you would just fight and deal with the creature or whatever it is you have to deal with that way.
But
And then the more, I guess, more intricate kind of battle, like I find there was a lot more intricate, what's it, boss battles than there are nowadays. I find they all more or less come down to hack and slash with with throwing in some kind of element to deal with, and then maybe your occasional cool boss with some kind of neat mechanic. But for the most part, they're very like heavily action oriented.
has it tremendously like dulled down the experience for you, or
I still
it's
I
just
still find I
slower
have
burner?
it definitely has changed around the pace. There's a little bit more, there's a little less of that wow factor. I think that's why a lot of people have gravitated towards games like Elden Ring, because there's like a general challenge. You can't just go in there and like just hack and slash and hope for the best. Like you actually have to go in there with some decent amount of skill, or at least some kind of a strategy to know like what you have to kind of work around, which was what people liked about the RPGs back in the day. There was always something that you had to figure out, especially that there wasn't as much of the internet as there is now.
Hmm.
Like to figure out a boss when you would get up to it. Like I remember playing through Final Fantasy X, trying to beat uh, what was it, Lady Unalesca at the very end of the game, and her whole thing was she would just cast the second you got into the fight, she would cast death, or she would, I don't remember exactly what she would cast on you, but she would completely annihilate your whole party. This was a boss that everyone got screwed at the first time they played through. Like you'd walk in there, it's like, oh, okay, if you weren't prepared for it, she just one shot your whole team. So you actually had to go out, like level up or find some ways to get around that
Hmm.
obstacle.
And
And I find that,
those types of scenarios in video games,
yeah,
there's gonna be that one odd person, that one off, who's going to like walk into that situation and and succeed on his first try,
yeah.
and that moment will be seared in that person's mind for the rest of his life. He's gonna remember that. It's not gonna go away because you saw it coming, or you were just prepared for some reason,
No,
and
that's it.
it's funny that you say it because like it says it in the title, RPG role playing game, right?
Yeah,
Role playing meaning they really want you to invest your time and your creativity with this character,
yeah,
meaning they want you to embody it and become that character essentially when you're playing the game. And I think you're right. I think that's why a game like Elden Ring did so well, because it didn't it it gave people that feeling again of like it's not just you playing something through a screen. It's, hey, that's, I'm experiencing that on the screen. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I'm going through this trial, I'm going through this trouble right now of trying to accomplish this goal. Because like when you look at games today, maybe again I'm not heavy in RPGs, but like I can say like if you play an open world game or something where you're supposed to create your character and run around in the open world and do what you want to do,
Yeah,
and make your own story, quote unquote. There's quest markers everywhere. There's HUD all over the place. There's easy way outs. There's all kinds of stuff you can use to your advantage,
yeah,
like game mechanics. You can
yeah.
open up a map and you'll see like you already have everything on your map. You know where all the shops are. You know where everything is.
Reminds me of Skyrim, what you're talking about mostly right now, or like either Skyrim or maybe even Oblivion. I don't remember if they had that much stuff, but it just reminds me of Skyrim.
Well, that's it. You know,
Yeah,
and but and I've never played Elden Ring, and I want to play it. The only reason I haven't played it is because I think my wife will divorce me if I do. So apparently, the game really sucks you in. So I'm waiting
it
for
it
when I have some time off to really dive into it. Uh,
it definitely does suck you in, but like I definitely say like I don't know, give it a couple of weeks until you beat the game at least the first time, and then maybe even the second time, because you can. I think there's about seven different endings for that whole game,
mhm.
mate, six or seven. Or maybe eight. I don't remember exactly how many there were, but there's around that many, around seven endings.
But that's it. Like I'm trying to say is like one of the biggest thing that I think kind of, I won't say ruin video games, but it is kind of dumbing it down a little too much, is
Hmm?
quest markers. Like it's all over the
Would
place.
oh
It's
yeah,
it's like it's not just that's where your objective is. It's okay, so that's where your objective is. So now we're gonna put a marker here, here, and here, showing you how to get to the quest marker on top of it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I think that's a little unfortunate because my understanding is that a game like Elden Ring, it's like, no, we're dumping you in the world, figure it out. You know?
pretty much. Like there's from what I've heard from what people like about Dark Souls and whatnot. Like there was a little bit more hand holding in Elden Ring, but when I mean a little bit more, I mean a very small amount. Like if there was like maybe 1% in Dark Souls and Demon Souls and all and like Sekiro, they just like upped it by like up to 2%. That's what I mean. That there was a bit
it's
more hand holding
it's
because they
basically like, oh, it's not gonna make you want to dig your eye out with a dull spoon. It's like,
yeah, exactly. You'll do it with a butter knife this time, or
but that's it. And I
like,
think, and I think doing that to a player, like throwing him into a world without holding his hand, or a very a very very little bit,
yeah,
um, that's what an I feel like that's what an RPG should be. You know, it's a role playing game. You decide how much you want to be invested in this world. You know,
yeah.
so
That's it.
I think
That's
today's
it.
RPGs just don't do that anymore. Is Final Fantasy VII Remake, is it like that, where there's a like markers everywhere and tells you where to go? Is it a very linear game or it's open world?
For the first one, it's definitely a little bit more linear. Like there is some openness to some of what you can do, like especially once you get out to oh my god, wherever the casino area is, that whole area where you can explore around. There's a bunch of side missions over there. Like there's areas where you can do a bunch of side missions, and it opens up a bit, but it's not as much as like let's say the old like the original Final Fantasy VII, where you would actually go out and explore the world. But
Mm-hmm.
it's also the area of the game where you were kind of stuck in a very linear place. Like even in the first game, you were stuck in Midgar for the first little part of the CD, and then once you got out there, that's where you got to go out into the open world. So even though it
Mm-hmm.
was linear, it still made sense because of where you were in that whole city. Like you were stuck in, you didn't have too much to kind of play around with. So maybe in the next one there will be.
Yeah, no, I remember
But I was,
when you leave the city or when you start exploring. Like, I don't know why I had this picture stuck in my head of being
mhm.
stuck in a park and there's a slide and like a kiddie's park or something. And I think it's when
Yeah,
you
yeah,
meet Eris or Eris's house or something or Tifa. I forgot.
yeah. There's that part. There's a park you're with Aerith. It's more or less the first time you're meeting her, and she's trying to take you back to meet up with Tifa and Barrett.
Is it Aerith or Eris?
I think it's Aerith.
Okay.
Everyone is like I think it's been confused for a while, but it's Aerith.
Okay. I don't want to. Well, anyways, I'll sound like an idiot on YouTube. Big deal. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
okay. But yeah, no.
If you were looking for something a bit more linear in that sense, I would have said Final Fantasy like 13. That was fairly linear, even though there was a promise of there being a big, huge open world like the previous ones.
What are you saying? Like it's level by level?
Yeah, it was pretty much level by level. There was only one area where you got to have some decent amount of like exploration, but then if the second you left that area, you were pretty much at the end of the game and you couldn't go back.
Okay.
So it was like it was a neat little experience, but it wasn't like the other Final Fantasies where you would actually have that whole open world. You'd have a whole world map, explore that whole area,
Mm-hmm.
and get to some different towns, have some different like subjects, and actually see the whole world for what it was, rather than just like you walk from one town to another and do stuff. Even Final Fantasy X, to some respect, was like that. But they gave you some open world aspects at the very end of the game too. Like you can go back to visit all the old islands and everywhere you went through.
Mm-hmm.
But it did push you generally in one direction.
And like unlike like we talked about stealth games a while ago, and to me like that's a niche that died down because they steered away from the core of stealth mechanics
Hmm.
and they went more action oriented, and then the that genre just died. Um,
Yeah.
I and that's not something I'll see RPGs suffering from though. I can see RPGs straying away, going the action route, and still being very profitable.
Well, I think I find it's probably easier to go around because like even though there's some fun stealth games that are out there here and there, like the second you start going into an action kind of realm, it completely takes the whole stealth aspect out because you're going into a stealth game to be like stealthy and coy and trying to deal with whatever's in and around you
Mm-hmm.
while trying not to make noise and whatnot. Whereas the second you go into an action kind of emphasis, like sort of like the later Splinter Cells, like you said, it takes away from trying to be stealthy and just more like how can I run and gun this whole area, or how can I, you know.
But that's it. Like I'm saying it from an RPG perspective. Like if they were to take away the turn-based action and make it more hack and slash,
Yeah.
I don't see that as damaging the RPG brand as much. Or am I wrong?
I don't think it really has. I don't think it really has, especially since more of the Western. I think the Western market has gone more the action route. I think that's where they like things. I just think that the to have like different routes into RPGs was a lot more interesting. There was more ways for you to kind of learn stuff in there, whereas now it's just go in there and shoot stuff. That was my whole take on it. Because yeah,
Okay.
they'll really I don't think it'll ever really die as a franchise. I think it's one of the things people love doing. Like it's fun to go through a shooter. Like imagine playing through Warzone or playing through most any other shooters, but it's you just get that one gun and it has those same stats the entire time. Sort of like the Doom series or more of the old school shooters where you just have that one gun and that was it. But now they've incorporated some ways to customize your gun. I think people like customization, hence why like a lot of RPGs kind of fit that bill because it's you can tailor it to how you like to play.
Okay. I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see that definitely. And RPGs, I don't think they're that popular on multiplayer, aren't they? I'm thinking of them, and I think most of them are single player only.
For the most part, yeah. I don't think they've really delved into multiplayer aspects. Maybe some co-op stuff. Um,
Maybe when you dive
but
into multiplayers and RPGs, that's when you fall into the category of MMO.
yeah, basically, it's more of an MMO. That's why you have games like Final Fantasy 11 and 14. You have World of Warcraft. Like all of those are all MMOs,
Don't you
which they're
forget
fun to
Lineage
play.
2, man. Son of a bitch.
Oh yeah, there's also that inferior game,
But
but yeah. So
it's Korean.
we'll move
Respect them.
past. Hey, they made Perfect World. I can't really respect them for that. Like
But
they made perfect.
honestly, Lineage 2 was a game that I really got involved in, like heavy. Like
Yeah,
like it was the first time where I was really exposed to oh, sorry, long night.
yeah, no
um,
worries.
it was the first time I was exposed to like RPG mechanics and really diving into it to try to understand the intricacies of how things function and crafting and whatnot. And I was really into developing my character and
Yeah,
leveling him up from one class, turning him into a gladiator and all that stuff. And like I was so into it. But then, back then when I was doing that in the summers, it came with a price tag, right? Like $20 a month
yeah.
is steep when you're a young adult, you know.
That's it. It was the same thing with World of Warcraft for me. It was fun to level up your character.
Hmm.
I I wouldn't say World of Warcraft now, but I found that most of those games back in the day, that MMOs didn't have so much emphasis on storytelling, or if there was no real reason to follow it compared to like those the other RPGs where they were more story oriented and you had to kind of follow something along there.
Yeah, like Dragon Age and Inquisition. Does The Witcher fall into RPG?
Yeah, it definitely falls into RPG.
Okay, so The Witcher I would say is a game that I enjoyed also, and I never finished it, but and I only played The Witcher 3. But I had a lot of
I
fun
think
with it.
most people did.
Oh, and do you think Witcher 1 and 2 is skipped a lot?
I think people like the diehard fans really liked it. I think there was a lot of growing at that time with CD Projekt Red and trying to figure out their own thing.
Mm,
And then once The Witcher 3 came out, it just blew everyone out of the park.
mm.
It was still that kind of action RPG, but it was a good mix of creating your own kind of builds, some pretty decent combat mechanics. It was fun
Yeah.
for what it was.
What I liked about The Witcher is that um, the way that the game is designed is that the harder you go in difficulty, it doesn't necessarily make the game harder. Like it doesn't turn the enemy into like like damage
The meat
sponge.
sponge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it doesn't limit your resources extremely to the point where you're playing The Last of Us all of a sudden. You know,
Yeah.
no, it basically it forces you to be like a Witcher. To understand which weapon, which types of fire, what type of poison affects what creatures. You actually
Yeah.
had to understand what being a Witcher was and how they did what they did in order to accomplish it. The harder it got in difficulty, which is genius to me. Role playing accomplished at the highest level. So I would say, like for me personally, the best RPG that I've played, it's sad to say I never finished it, is The Witcher 3.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a commitment, that one.
And I do have memories of Final Fantasy VII original on PlayStation, and that one I did finish, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember it at all. I remember obviously I remember the core, like the main stuff, right?
Yeah.
Sephiroth's, like big ass BBC sword, and and I fucking that thing was huge, man, in the cutscene. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous. I remember all those things, and the materia and the other characters, like, yeah, but like the absolute every single step of the way story, I don't remember it. Um, so I don't know. I guess I have a hard time, me personally, investing my like suspending my believability when playing those games.
Mm.
Um, to get sucked into that world because I know it's a fantasy world. Like if they were to make an RPG game that's like, I don't know, a World War II game, and you're playing as like the Russians or the British or Americans or Canadians or whatever, um, yeah, I think I'd get sucked into that real fast because I can relate to it. I can, if I can't relate to the experience that's happening, it's a little harder for me to get dragged into that.
Yeah.
Um, which is unfortunate because I feel like because of that I'm missing out on some great titles.
I guess it's more to your taste and what you're used to, right? Like I was more up for me. I was more into the JRPGs back in the day. More like I was into the Final Fantasy 7, 8. I was into Chrono Trigger a lot. Like I think throughout the entire series of that game, I've had it on every system that I've had and played it through multiple times. Even though I know what the story is, it's such a for me it was such a fun game. But I never really got into the more like I did get into some Western games. There was still some that were fun, but I found that, like I said, after Final Fantasy 10, basically around the PS2 era, is where there was a big shift in what RPGs were. Because
Mm-hmm.
PS1 still kept to some of the traditional formula with 7, 8, and 9, and then the 10 was like their dabble into something different, and then they just kind of changed their whole formula from there.
Yeah, it probably sold. Like a lot of people bought it because
Yeah,
a lot of people said, "Oh, I can play this now,"
yeah,
which I get. It's a very attractive model, but I feel like when you detract from your core audience, like in that way,
yeah.
and you steer away from those core elements that made the game or that style of game so good at what it was, I think sooner or later it will come to bite you in the ass.
Yeah, I think it'll probably take a bit longer for RPGs because, like I said, it's the more customizable of the games. That's why people like it.
Yeah,
But even in stealth games, they do kind of give you like what was it, that game that I was playing before? That was before we started streaming their Mark of the Ninja.
yeah.
That one has some kind of role playing elements too. Like there's a bit of a talent tree in order to level up your character. Even the way you um, handle your missions.
Mm-hmm.
You can either go the just a complete stealth route, don't kill anything, and I think you'll get like a different ending. At least from what I'm gathering, that's what it seems like. There was one cutscene where they're like, "Oh, you can try and steal something from him, or you can kill him." And I feel like it steers you away from something, even just the way they're talking about your character.
Okay.
So I think RPGs are the next level up from stealth games, and that it'll survive longer. But I don't think. I think it'll maybe die down as popularity goes on. There's still going to be those niche ones that'll come out that'll rock people's socks, but I think compared to before, where there was a constant great RPG one after another, it's hard to find nowadays.
Well, I think Elden Ring. That's what Elden Ring is gonna do for that community. It's
Yeah,
gonna revive like difficult. I'm throwing you into this world, but I'm not helping you out type RPG.
yeah,
Because it's attracting people like me, people that
yeah,
don't play RPGs. I'm like I can't suspend my belief to go play those kinds of games. But
yeah,
this one, I have to try it, you know. And it's when I suspend my belief and I try those types of games where that's where sometimes I find something absolutely amazing. Like had I not suspended my belief and given God of War a chance, oh my God, I would have missed out on such an amazing franchise, you know.
yeah.
Um, so yeah. So before we close off, I just want to know, um,
Mhm.
if you had to tell me to play one RPG that you think that I would enjoy, okay, whatever it is, well, just tell me. I know you've told me Mass Effect in the past, and if it's still that, tell me that. But if you had to tell me to play one RPG, what is it?
I would like if you wanted to just play any old RPG just for the sake of trying it, even if it was like one of the old school ones. I would definitely say hit up Chrono Trigger. It was such a fun little series. It was a fun way to go around stuff. There's a lot of role playing aspects. It was for what it was. It's still an awesome game.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want something a little bit more current, I would definitely say go through the Mass Effect series. Despite what people say about the ending of the third one, I would still go through it. It's from beginning up until the end. It's a lot of fun. The whole journey up until the end is a lot of fun.
All right, so I'll try them both. Chrono Trigger's
Yeah.
what platform is that on? Is it on PC or no?
I
I
mean,
know it's really old, but I know what you're gonna say. Don't say that. But
yeah, I was gonna say if you procure it by, it's
no, but like
other means,
it's
but
not, it's
yeah,
not in
you
any
can get.
platform store that you can buy like Steam or something. They don't have a PC port or.
I don't believe so. Funny enough that you mentioned it, the continuation for it, they just finished releasing it on Steam and other platforms, so it might be on Steam.
Okay.
But outside of that, if you still have like a PS1 or PS2, there's a one on there, or there's the one on the DS that you can play through as well.
Ah, okay, nice. And
Yeah,
Mass Effect, well, yeah, I saw it on Steam. I picked it up, so I'll definitely have to install that and give it a whirl.
yeah, no, for
The
sure.
thing is that these games are such an investment in time, man.
That's yeah. I think that's the other thing too. Well, yeah, I would say that was one of the other things that kind of killed it for some people. But then again, you have games like Skyrim where people have put in so many hours into it just because there's so much replayability in it.
Isn't there a rumor that people still didn't find everything that's in Skyrim? Like things are still being discovered till today.
I actually don't know. I wouldn't surprise me because it's the same thing with at least for the most part, it's the same thing with Elden Ring. There was so much that they wanted you to discover. They haven't told you everything. You had to go around, and there's people who are literally smacking walls in certain areas to open up hidden paths just to find stuff.
Jesus. So
Because
they're
like
just walking around hitting walls.
yeah, because there's all kinds of random hidden like walls that will just like if you smack them, they'll just disappear, and you'll find a whole other area.
Man, I was watching a video of somebody explaining how large Elden Ring is. He shows you the map and where you start, and then he goes from one point to another, and he fast forwards to show you how long it took,
Yeah,
and you see the progress in the map because it's like a fog of war, right? And like it clears up as you
yeah.
progress, and yeah, the map is huge, man. And
Well,
then,
it's well,
but then he got teleported to somewhere else, and then when you see the gap, I was like, holy shit!
yeah, no, but that's the thing is like the map that they give you like at the beginning is about like this big, and
Yeah,
you think, oh, that's my whole extent of the world.
which is not bad.
Which yeah, it's a pretty good size. And then once you start going out there, another chunk over here opens up, and you're like, oh, there's a lot more to the world. To the point where like you're literally taking like my whole screen up
Yeah,
as far as the map goes,
and
and it just starts off a small little thing.
when the dude was explaining, it's like, yeah, then you get a map that's like this big, and you're like, Jesus, like I'm never
Yeah,
gonna explore all this, and then you realized that's just the surface.
yeah,
And then you have the underworld, and then you have the secret castles, and then you have all dungeons, and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to go through. Just that one map alone is just what's on the surface.
Yeah,
It's a huge, huge game.
and it's like a and it's so much fun when you talk about it because it's like it gives you that it's what an RPG is supposed to invoke in someone, you know, where
Yeah.
it's like a call to adventure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
yeah, but hey man, I appreciate you taking the time talking to me about the RPGs,
Yeah.
and yeah, like hopefully I can break away from my fear of playing a game that's not grounded in reality.
Yeah. Yeah, no
I
kidding, man.
suspend my belief more because I think it'll be better for me. I can enjoy more games. But yeah, no,
No,
thanks
yeah,
a lot, man. I appreciate you chatting with me today about it.
for sure, buddy.
All right, take it easy.
Take it easy, dude.